And against? Carried. Okay, next one up is the Auckland Transport Update. That'll be short and succinct, I'm absolutely positive. So Dean and Murray are here. Welcome.
Well, kia ora, good morning, everybody. It's always good to be here. We'll promise to keep our presentation short and succinct, as guided by the Chair, and we'll be in your hands with respect to questions. But on that note, could we please get the presentation up? Okay, very good, very good. Thank you, thank you. Look, can I acknowledge we've got our Chair Richard Leggett here with us today. He always appreciates hearing the nature of the conversation and inquiry, and so I'm really pleased that he's here. And before I get into some of the recent highlights and topical updates, thanks to those of this committee that could join us on Monday at Auckland Transport. I thought that opportunity to, as committee members and for the AT board, to mix and mingle and just talk about some of the very important things that are happening, how we're looking at delivering transport outcomes across the network, and sharing perspectives was really valuable. So thank you for joining us. So look, just some recent highlights. Can I touch on a few things? There's been ongoing and really good news around the contactless payments. You'll see a slide on that and some comments. There's some really good news around the opening of the Pukekohe railway station the other weekend. There's some awesome work, and Murray will touch on it in terms of capital program around flood recovery. We're a year ahead. We've delivered well ahead and under budget of what everybody expected. So there's some really, really strong things happening through what we do. And it was awesome to hear just the progress being made on CRL, wasn't it? Can I touch on a few things that aren't inside the topical updates? First one is overnight parking. You'll have all received a note regarding overnight parking in the city centre. The decision is made to hold that over to 1 March. There'll be a nominal charge of $1 or $2 per hour, depending on where that car park is. This is in response to the team's significant additional work with the various representative groups across the city centre. So I'm pleased with the outcome and thank you for your patience. Speed limit reversals, I know this is topical. We have completed a review. We've got some just under 1,600 roads that need to be reversed according to the new speed rule. That all has to come into place by 30 June. We are arranging to a staged implementation. We'll be looking before the end of March to have done speed reversals on arterials. And our focus there is, it's a smaller number, but it's where we've got our primary movement corridors. So there's a link between getting those done and some of the productivity and movement gains that are anticipated through that legislation. The balance will get done over the following months, and that includes local roads or other roads, including local roads and schools. There's about 153 schools that will need signage that's suitable for their purposes. It is worth noting that the cost of this is unbudgeted. And that the government through NZTA is proposing 50% recovery. We've currently got an estimated cost of just under $9 million for that work. That's the total cost, which will be split. We're looking at how we might reduce that cost though, to ensure that it's cost effective, but that is an unbudgeted expenditure. And many of you will be aware that there's been a judicial review which is challenging the decision. Our approach is the law is what it is currently, and we're continuing to implement according to the law. If the judicial review finds differently, then we'll respond, but there's no guarantee as to what that result might be. Temporary traffic management. Yesterday we went out with a notice to all industry to address a number of things that have been really frustrating and concerning us. Simon Buxton will join me shortly, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview. Quite rightly, there's been a lot of focus on the presence of construction activity in the road space, and it's not been a happy place for us or any of us, to be fair. The things that we've been doing over the last 12 months have been significant. There has been a change from a code of practice to a set of guidelines that are risk-based. Getting the industry to shift from bulk standard approach to a risk-based approach should not be underestimated. There's a lot of education around that. Then over the summer period, we did our cone cleanup, which was we've got contractors going around picking up cone litter, signage litter. I'll call it that because that's what it is. So then the next deep source of frustration was actually we've got many parties doing work, particularly in arterials and town centres, and they're closing down lanes or occupying those lanes for too long. They're not putting signage up to say who it is. They're not removing it when it's done. They're putting contractor vehicles on the inside of the cone so they've got a place to park. All of these things that I know have irritated many of you deeply, they irritate us too. A notice has gone out yesterday, so this is the third layer of a program saying if you want to do work in an arterial or in a town centre, don't expect to get approval for doing it if it involves a lane closure during peak periods, AM peak and afternoon peak. Now that's going to be really challenging. We'll get feedback, but we decided we have to go there. The second thing that we have done, well, the other things we've done around that, is we've said you need to put signage up. 30% of all work in the road corridor is Auckland Transport. 70% is other parties. I'm going to go there when I mention Victoria Street and Federal Street. So we had a challenge there over the last week. And I don't want to dive into it, except that last night we did the road marking and we got everything away. And this morning I'm walking up here and guess what? I've got cones out and a contractor. And you know what? It's Vector doing emergency underground power works for Sky City. We didn't know that was going to happen, but everybody look and say, hell's teeth, excuse me. Auckland Transport, what are they doing? We haven't got anything to do with that, and that happens 70% of the time. So, if you can sense my frustration, then you're right to sense it. So look, there's a lot going on there that we want to get more on top of, but this has been a very open area with very little control, and we're looking to bring control in, but you've got to bring it in a staged manner. I've spent some time on those things, but I wanted to because I felt that they were important. As we go into, I've picked up on some of these highlights. I don't think there's much more I need to cover off in there, but I do want to pull out, there's been some awesome major events across Auckland, and we have delivered superbly with your support for those major events without a rail network operating. And I'm really pleased with how the team's responded, how they've leant into it, and I don't think any of you would have received complaints. I think most of you will receive bouquets for the fact that people are able to move in and move out, and that should not be underestimated for the effort that they put in, so I'm very pleased with that. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Murray. He'll give you some updates on capital program, then Scott and I will touch on a couple of other things, then I'm going to invite Simon up to talk about network productivity. Thank you, Murray.
Thanks, Dean. And as Councillor Baker said, over the summer holiday period, there's been a lot of work happening in both the rail and the road corridor and making the most of the lower traffic volumes during the summer break. So running through a few things, and I have some pictures just to illustrate some of the sites, but a lot more work has been done than shown in these pictures. We have the Reeves Road flyover, the bridge over Te Rakau Drive. You would have seen the bridge beams going in there So really good progress on Eastern Busway. In the rail corridor, Homai Station access was completed during the summer block of line, and continuing work with the train units being built, and now 11 have been approved for shipping. So that's almost half the fleet approved for shipping, ready for CRL. You've already seen some pictures and some talk about the opening of Pukekohe to Papakura electrification and the new stations there. So great work and continuing work with the jewellery stations happening on that southern line. An enormous amount of work in the road corridor with road resurfacing. 6 major arterial road rehabilitations happened over summer. Even Simon Street right here in the city, and went very smoothly. A lot of work happening on the flood recovery, many retaining walls being built to support parts of the network that were broken down during the 23 floods. And yesterday I was out at Milldale with the opening of the new bridge over State Highway 1. So that's another completion of a connection for a community up there in the north of Auckland. So a few pictures there to illustrate some of the work. And one other thing I'll highlight in the ferry program, the electric ferries are now having on-water testing, and we're well advanced in the construction of the charging infrastructure at Half Moon Bay. If anyone's been down there, they'll see the activity. I'll leave it there and hand back to Dean to talk about time of use charging.
I'm going to take this slide as read. I think there's been a lot of discussion as a committee. You're aware of where we're at with time of use. Happy to take any questions on it. And like to introduce Scott Campbell, known to all of you, I'm sure. He was going to give us an update on progress against our commitments on Māori outcomes. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Dean. Ko rangatira tēnā te mihi atu ki a koutou. Apologies I can't be in the room. But talking to the slide, and appreciate some of the numbers may seem small, but I'll run through them just briefly. In the year to date, we've had a spend of 28 or just over $28 million towards Māori-owned businesses, either indirect or through subcontracted suppliers. That equates to 2.76 of our total spend. The target for our FY 24-25 is 3%. As you may be able to read through the graph, the fact that we increase our total overall spend means that our 3% goes up as well. So that's a good challenge to have, but what it does mean is it puts an impact on the capacity of Māori-owned businesses in the sector. So we are working closely with iwi, mana whenua and suppliers to be able to get to that 3% figure, and we are confident of that. When we look at the projects that we've been involved in throughout this period, our team have worked with mana whenua on 37 different projects, including the Te Kia Marae car park project, which was completed in November. A really successful project, helping both for safety and also accessibility at the marae. We have 2 other projects that we're currently working through with marae as well. In regards to the public transport announcements and use of both English and Te Reo Māori, you can see in the slide that we are at 100% or close to 100% on buses, and then 100% on train platforms and ferry terminals. We are working through announcements on the trains, and as you can see, they were at just about or just over 48% at the moment. That was an increase from 25% over this period. So the team are working through that in a fast pace. In regards to work where we are engaging with mana whenua and iwi, there are some of the events where we have worked alongside iwi and mana whenua, but as I said, there were 37 others, and these included things like the Henderson Station upgrade, Eastern Busway, the pedestrian rail station bridge at Glen Innes, and also with Mātāwaka on the regional public transport plan. So the team are doing a lot of work with both our iwi, mana whenua and Mātāwaka We are still working through the development of an engagement plan with Mātāwaka, but we are working closely with our council counterparts as well. Dean, I'll pass back to you for the next part.
Thank you, Scott. Now, if I can just invite Simon and Tracy Burkhan to join us, and we'll give you an update on what we're doing around network optimisation. And then happy to take questions, Chair. Is that the right sequence? Thank you.
So kia ora and good afternoon. I'll introduce Tracy Burkhan as well, who is our Road Corridor Access Manager. So this is what's on screen is the 6 work streams that make up what we call the network productivity portfolio. This is the 3rd update on them that I've brought to this committee. I'll take the deck as read and then just point out a couple of highlights, and then the main purpose today is to have a focused conversation on network disruptions and TTM, temporary traffic management. So we have to balance movement, access, safety on the network across all those portfolios. A couple of highlights, network optimization. So we're now we're actually over halfway through the commitment this year to improve traffic signal improvements at intersections, 125 of the 250 completed. And we also are using, separately to that, smart detection technology at some of the signal junctions. So for example, Tiraka Drive, Trugood in East Auckland, we've managed to change the signals there through the smart detection to achieve a 2-minute time saving for those turning right. It's just a local example. And we'll come on to network disruptions, but just quickly on parking. So when Dean said earlier, city centre paid parking 1st of March, he meant 1st of March 2026. So we're giving people a year's warning there. Other highlights on parking and curbside portfolio, city centre parking management plan is going to consultation later this month. We have slightly delayed it following the Trick Councillor briefing last year. Some of you asked for it to be pushed back a little bit just because of the summer holidays and people returning. So that will now start on the 26th of February and go to the end of March. And our Albany Park and Ride, we're looking there at a bookable spaces pilot next month to make sure we're serving customers who turn up later in the day and often find that there aren't parking places available because they've all been taken in the AM peak. So that's just a couple of the highlights across the portfolios, and we'll go back to network disruptions, including temporary traffic management. So Dean's given the highlights of the letter we sent out to the industry yesterday and the reasons why. We are firm on this now. We want to make sure corridors are for movement. We want to make sure that in the AM peak, other than some emergency works and exceptions, the primary purpose of that is for movement in the corridor, town centres, arterials and some of the main roads. And we've issued, as you've probably seen, a directive to the industry that they have to review all existing work within 3 weeks, and all new applications are subject to the new process, as well as the focus on signage and minimising temporary traffic management when works aren't happening. So I'll pass to Tracy, who will just give you some highlights across the network disruptions portfolio, and then we can move to questions.
Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me. I won't read the slides, I'll take them as read, and I think the questions will be the profit and the benefit of this session, but I just wanted to do a very brief introduction. I've been here before, and I just wanted to make clear that the temporary traffic management stream of work that we're doing at Auckland Transport is really closely joined up with the network optimisation and the disruption programs of work. So we're all working together to ensure that we're delivering initiatives that optimise the network, reduce disruptions and sort of eliminate and eradicate orange cones where possible. So it's quite a multi-tentacled beast, the disruptions program at AT, and we're really thankful of the interactions we have with councillors about hotspots in their particular areas so that we can start to hone in and address some of those things. We continue to work to transition from this code of practice of temporary traffic management, that old 600-page rulebook, to our risk-based and principles-based approach under the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management. but we're also very aware that actually you all and Aucklanders can't necessarily see the progress that we're making, and I think that manifests every day when you tell us about sites that are causing disruption. Again, I encourage you to keep telling us so that we can keep working through those cases and learning from them, and actually then putting together a work program that will address these on a scalable basis. I won't go into the current directive that's gone out to industry, because Dean and Simon have introduced that beautifully. But what we did was we waited until after that busy construction period while Aucklanders are on holiday, and we've actually doubled down with the industry and said you need to change your approach on arterials. One of the pieces of real benefit and progress is going to be in technology going forward. And again, I warrant that you can't actually see some of the technology changes we're making in the background, and the slide that's up on the screen at the moment makes reference to managing live worksite disruptions. One tiny little example is a cone identification project we're looking at, where the computer vision technology we've got at intersections has been trained to identify a cone. And what we're doing is now asking that program to go using AI and other technology into the approval system and say, are you supposed to be there, cone? And if you are not, why are you there? And then alerting an operator in ATOC so that they can get onto that. We also have got technology that's starting to identify unexpected congestion using the logarithms that we have on the TomTom data, where we're saying, should this be this congested at this time of day in the rain? And if not, why not? And is that a work site that's causing that? So there's some really amazing things happening in the background, and we'll start to see the benefits of those as we go through. One of the other things I did want to highlight as well was just the sheer number of applications we get. I think it's useful to understand that there were 9,600 applications to access the corridor in the December quarter. That's in a heavy construction period, but we have over 30,000 applications a year. And I understand and acknowledge that some of those go pear-shaped, but if you think about the percentage of projects that go wrong in a landscape of 30,000 approvals, I think that gives you some quite useful context. Again, I though reiterate, if your constituents are telling you there's a problem with a site, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me personally, and I'll send someone out that day to do that. We have a 24/7, Councillor Hills is probably laughing because he does. But we have a 24/7 team that will go out and investigate unsafe or inefficient sites. So please do let us know. Also, Dean made mention of the proactive cleaner. We did 2 wards for 3 weeks over the Christmas period, and they picked up 700 cones and other paraphernalia. That's at that bottom graphic there. Now, the interesting thing was that 35% of that equipment was unbranded. So while we were able to repatriate and pal off 65% of the miscreants that left their gear or had it stolen, we actually couldn't identify the owners for 35% of it. And that's because people have got cones in their back gardens and they're putting them out to save parking spaces in front of their houses and or other things that are happening out on the network that Auckland Transport has got no visibility of. I think Dean also shared the statistic that only 30% of the work was AT work, but we're working to corral that, and we're also looking at a fee review where we might incentivise, by way of charging a fee, people not to leave redundant gear out on the network. I'll leave it at that and take any questions. Thank you.
So over to Councillor Oars now. Any questions on any of the topics that we've raised? Thank you very much.
Okay, so we do have a number of questions, and just ask that people keep them to what we've heard in the report, because there are mechanisms for you to take up your individual items within your patches. So if you could keep them to what's in the report. So first up, Daniel.
Yes, indeed, keeping it to the report. Tracy, thanks. I wanted to ask, and thank you for the good work that you're doing, but I'm wondering if the learnings from the the Auckland anniversary flood really reveals what can be achieved, because we use the emergency measures at that time to get access into the road corridor for some pretty important work. And I'm just wondering, does that really, I'm not sure if that was a time where where the organisation didn't succeed. I thought it did succeed using those emergency powers. So is that really the standard that we can move to moving forward, or is there a need for a more precautionary approach now that we are outside of that state of emergency?
It's quite interesting because January 2023 we weren't operating under the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management that was published in April 23. So actually what we've got now is the opportunity to use those learnings and do exactly that. What we have to encourage the industry to do is apply those bold ideas. We've had a very conservative uptake to NZG TTM and a risk-based approach, and we're working with industry to give them the confidence to come to us with alternative and bold ideas to as you say, kind of use those sorts of situations where we pull together in a time of crisis and apply those in a time of non-crisis in order to make improvements.
And Dean, I wanted, it's a question I prematurely asked before, but with respect to some of the work practices of your contractors around the road resealing and the failure for them to basically do that work to a high standard up front at a time which is optimal to do so, it causes us to have to go back, repeat, because some of those contractors are not getting it right the first time. And I'm wondering what conversations are being had with those contractors, because all those repeats do mean more cones and does mean more disruption.
I'm happy to take that. So absolutely, there's quality standards that the contractors are working towards, and they have to achieve that or they're not paid for the work. We did roll out new maintenance contracts about 12 months ago, and there was some variability between the different contractors' performance. And there's been a lot of work to lift performance across the entire city. And so in terms of your question, they're not paid for bad work, and the amount of repeat work is significantly reduced now as we've worked to lift the performance of each of the contractors. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Richard?
Kia ora, thanks, Chair. And just, first a slight comment on thanks for the work over summer, massive, and on big projects like Birkenhead Ave, rehab, the communication and the skill of those workers on, talking to them on Boxing Day and things like that. It's just phenomenal work. So thanks for that. The questions I have around the safer speeds, and I do have an amendment I've sent to Councillor Baker and Councillor Fletcher. We don't know how much that might cost or estimate, and will that have to come out of other project money?
We've got an initial, thank you, Councillor. We do have an initial estimate. It's 8.8 million, which would be 50% funded through NZTA. No, it's not budgeted for. We are also looking at how we can pull that cost down, and that is a piece of work that's happening as we speak. Having said that, there are things that we can get going with, and I talked to that around arterials. It's a small amount of the road network, but it's a significant part of our primary freight and vehicle movement corridors. So we're working on several fronts at the same time.
Thank you. With the sort of strange wording, in my opinion, that we can do it, we don't have to reverse them if it didn't include a school, which seems an odd priority. But does that mean that we will be keeping areas like city centre, town centres, neighbourhood centres in place at the 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've done a piece of work around the why of speed reductions across Auckland, and when a lot of the approach across Auckland at the time, and which was the basis of consultation, was we wanted to reduce speeds around schools, etc. Now, if some other councils have reduced speed, but they didn't use the school as a primary mechanism for reducing the speed. And so that difference means that they are keeping some of their town centre areas at the lower speed, and are able to carve out the school in a particular fashion, but we're not able to follow that route. So I can give you further information from the team about how we're handling it, but in Auckland we took a different approach, which has resulted in a more blanket speed reversal program than what other transport authorities are doing around the country.
So, blanket speed reversal, but these were not blanket speed implemented. And because it was done based on consultation and evidence of DSI, the highest risk, are you confident in saying that reversing these speeds will definitely mean more deaths and serious injuries of Aucklanders?
Yeah. So look, this is a tricky one. We've assessed the 1,500, 1,600 roads for the risk and whether we've got the necessary infrastructure in place to help manage the risk of speed, with a reversal in mind. So the approach is quite simply, we need to comply with the law. The law is we need to reverse the speeds. That's the first point. The second point is that we have looked at the roads where those reversals will be occurring, and we're contemplating what, if anything else, we might need to do to ensure safety. The third thing that we're doing is we're going to monitor what the impact of the speed reversal is in that section of road. Now, talking to the team, that's not going to be a 1 month or a 3 month thing. Typically, you get a trend over several years. So we will be monitoring to see what the impact of speed reversals are, and the opportunity for communities to come back and say, actually, we would like 30k in this area exists, and the new speed rule sets out the opportunity for that. So it is a difficult area for me to say there will be more DSI, same, less, whatever. We've got an approach that's layered as best we can, with the starting point we need to comply with the law.
So what you mean by other things in place? Are you saying that because we have an obligation of safety, if we were to increase these speeds in a lot of places, we may have to put in crossing speed bumps, other infrastructure that will cost us a lot more as well?
That could be one of the consequences. Yes, communities might say, look, we are less comfortable now, and through the local board, through you as a council, or they might seek for investment on a signalised pedestrian crossing, or maybe a raised platform, or other infrastructure solutions that calm traffic. So that could well be an outcome of an increase in speed in those sensitive areas.
And the last question, well, it's a split into two. The first part is, so you're saying we do have to wait for more deaths and serious injuries, monitor how many more people die or get run over before we can put them back in. And then have we assessed the economic impact? Because Waka Kotahi's very good evidence for this in 2023 shown an overwhelmingly positive economic impact of these lower speeds, not the other way around.
Yeah. So we do know that there is an economic benefit for reducing death and serious injury. That's obvious to everybody. So I agree with that. There's no question about it. What we don't know is what the effect of lifting a speed from 30 to 50 or 60 to 80 or 80 to 100 will have on those corridors. We don't know that yet. But if somebody's travelling faster, we do know there is a increase in the nature of the injury that occurs. So, but we're not, and we shouldn't just rely on speed to manage death and serious injury across our network. And that's why we're very invested in looking at how we calm traffic in those locations too. Because there's always somebody that chooses not to comply with the speed limit. And so the other interventions we do help manage that risk. So we're committed to moving on all fronts. Look, I've got to say, one of the good things we have seen is we've seen more breath testing, alcohol and drug testing on the networks. And we've worked really closely with the police to campaign together to say, If you're going to do that, you will get caught because we're out, we're watching. And just the fact that the police are out there doing that and that we're telling people that we're doing it has had a beneficial impact. So we're trying to work within the scope of the law, the scope of what we're funded and now tasked to do to achieve that DSI reduction benefit. We remain deeply committed to that, and that's probably the best I can put it.
Thank you. Angela?
Thank you. Just to follow up on what Richard was asking you about, Dean, thank you. So just to confirm, the original speed reductions were not blanket speed reductions. They were based on evidence, and they were based on quite considerable consultation over years. Actually, it's taken a number of years to try and implement some of the speed reductions. However, the increase in the speed now is a blanket and not based on evidence and not going out for consultation with community. That is the fact.
Yes, simply put, that would be one way of characterising what has happened. Yep, that's the call of the government.
And yeah, thank you. And in assessing the impact of increased speeds, we're going to be using DSI, and you've explained there's other things that we can do to reduce DSI. It just isn't all about speed. The motivation for the increase from the government to increase speed is economic growth. We're going to get people places faster. Is that an assessment that Auckland Transport will also do, or is that more of a government? Do you know of anyone that's actually going to assess if travelling getting somewhere 20 seconds faster is going to improve economic growth? Because that's perhaps not a question for you, Dean, but you might have some insight that you can share of the benefits that are meant to come from increasing the speeds in terms of economic growth.
We're not doing that assessment. That'll be left for others to do. Our focus is on how we manage the network safely.
My second question is around the judicial review, and you've said there's approximately $8.8 million to put in the increasing the speeds, unbudgeted. Is there a time frame that this has to be completed by? Because obviously it would make more sense to wait for the judicial review to be completed, fiscally responsible to wait until the review had been completed. But is this out of Auckland Transport's hands because the government has put in a deadline date?
Look, the call we've made, and I will own this, is that we've got a legal requirement to reverse speeds between now and 30 June, and we're working our best to do that. We know that there's a judicial review. We don't know whether it will be successful or whole in part, and if it is successful in whole or part, then we will address that when we get to it. But I can't contemplate a future where we decide not to comply with the law in anticipation of something that might happen. And so that's the dilemma we're in. So the call I've made, and we've discussed it with the board and an executive team, is these challenges always come, but our first obligation, our first priority, our only priority is to comply with the law.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you.
Okay, Desley?
Thanks, Dean. Some real positive stuff in this. Look, especially pleased to hear the TMP work, and Chair, you've told me that you've had something to do with that too, so congratulations to you. Look, I just got a couple of questions around that. Is there any way that we can look at 24-hour works on arterials to get arterial work completed earlier?
We would welcome that. It's a discussion that you would need to have as councillors with respect to the unitary plan.
Okay, thanks for that. And the next question is,
I would like to see that discussion take place if that's okay. I don't want to leave that subject. That was, yeah, we would welcome it, but we recognise that, I've continued on that one, that arterials tend to be more industrial or commercial by nature, but not exclusively. There is a lot of residential activity, land use on an arterial, And so 24/7 does have noise-related effects, but we would certainly welcome it if we could do a super weekend, or we could do overnight work and then free up that arterial for daytime use with careful communications and strong political support and a change to the unitary plan. I think we could do that.
Great, thanks for that. And my second question is, why, as owners of the road and footpath, aren't we leading a discussion with other utilities so that we can share information, so we know who's doing what when? Because, you know, I've heard you say a couple of times that you're only 30% of the work, right? But why aren't we joined up in this technology that we have? Why can't we integrate what Vector are doing, what you're doing, what everybody else is doing, and make sure that the Dig One policy is a lot stronger than it is? And why didn't you know what was happening on Albert Street? I mean, we should have a better relationship, shouldn't we, with all the other companies? And if we don't, how can you lead the way in that space to have a conversation and share that information?
I can start that. We do have a really good relationship with the utilities. We've got strong relationships with the power, gas, telco and water care. We have quarterly meetings, planning meetings with them. What has been slow is the adoption of the national technology that puts everybody's forward works programs on a map so we can see them all together. The other thing is, in a budget constrained environment, often those projects move. So we have conversations with them. We acknowledge we need to be better in that space. The national code that governs the utility works in the road corridor is quite specific. We do have an obligation to consult with them and for them to share their forward work programs. There is a piece of software that displays all of the forward work programs that came out of the Christchurch earthquakes. What we'd love is if it was mandatory for particularly utilities and local bodies to put their forward works programs in that. And we're working with central government to kind of have words in the air to see whether that's a possibility. There's work to be done in the space, agreed, in Dig Once, and more works coordination needs to happen. We've got some initiatives in place to make sure that we're talking more with utilities.
I would like to add to that. We're deeply frustrated by this, and Tracy's being very nice, but we are deeply frustrated by this. And it is a technology investment, and probably we're at the point, sorry Tracy, of saying, well, we are going to do this. And if you're working our road and we're the road controlling authority, then you have to load it up. And before you commence your work, we've got to see it on the GIS layer. And Simon's got some good examples from the UK where they've employed that sort of technology. So I think we're at a tipping point. What has been lost sight of in New Zealand, and has definitely been lost sight of in Auckland, is the road is there for movement. It's not there for other people to do their work in, and we've lost sight of that principle. And so that is the principle that drives me, and these two are sick and tired of hearing me say that. It is there for people to move. And if we can get that embedded and then get people to respect it, and if they want to occupy a lane, they pay a lane rental or whatever it is to occupy that place, for the short period that they need it, they get in and get out. I think we'll be able to move the needle on this, and we'll free up our assets significantly. But we will come back to you with further thoughts, because there's a lot of crunchy effort going to this one, and I do not want to leave your question about how we work better unattended to. I think there is a place that we need to go more firmly as well.
So thanks for that, because I was going to talk to the chair about maybe adding another, a resolution along that, but I'm happy to leave it on the proviso that you're committed to coming back and talking about that, because I totally agree with you. The road is for movement, and it must be terribly frustrating when we haven't got the technology and we haven't got the integration and we don't know what's happening. So something needs to happen and fast. And
we've got people doing work whenever they want to, not telling us that they're going to do it, and not putting signage out to say who they are. Yeah, it just goes on and on.
So maybe also if we can, through the Mayor, talk to central government about fast tracking that work too, because I think it's integral to Auckland's success. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. Ken. Thank you.
Just going back to the cones and the contracts, is there a situation where a contractor has time, he has to get onto a contract as soon as it's allotted to him, or a time frame in which, reading between the comments in the West when I've complained about all these cones and stuff, I'm told that, oh, that's no longer under our control, it's the contractor, and the contractors be to it soon. And there's a whole bunch. I've taken people to different places which have still got cones on them. I got this perception that contractors could be building up an inventory of jobs. So when they get their contract, what's the time frame of them saying, okay, you've got that job, can they get multiple jobs in one contract? How do we manage that?
So it depends a little bit on who the contract is with. So Auckland Transport is two pieces in the respect that my team is the regulator and Murray's team is the one that actually does the work on the network. So I'll let Murray talk about contractual timing and things for Auckland Transport work, but you've got to remember that you've got everybody else out there also working in the road corridor, and we don't have the control on the contracts that Watercare let or private developers let to connect to the network. So your question's a good one, and there are contractual levers that we can pull to hold contractors to account for the timeliness of their work, but we actually don't have control over a number of those contracts that aren't AT works. Murray, I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the angle of your question, but I'll give a few answers that hopefully helps.
Well, if I may interrupt, the ones I was thinking of, we drove round, you and I, in West Auckland, and there were these little jobs everywhere that we looked at. They're still there, and they've still got cones on them, and they're Auckland Transport jobs.
Okay, so in terms of the delivery contract itself, we have a master contract agreement across a 5-year period for various maintenance renewals and minor capital. So it's the same contractor doing the work in multiple sites, yes. In terms of their corridor access requests, so their ability to access the road corridor and do the work, Tracy's team will deal with it in 2 ways. It can be a specific request for a specific site, and then that's defined by time and that they have to have a plan approved. However, there's other types of work which would be under emergency works or under routine maintenance, where they have a blanket agreement and they can access the corridor as and when they choose and able to do that work. I think the sites that you're talking about would be under emergency works, and the reason that the cones are still out there is because those sites have not been completed under the flood recovery work program, so that they're still dangerous sites. Motorists need to navigate around them, and we're working to get majority of those sites closed out by December this year to get those completed.
Thank you. Last question. Just if, I think it was the second pictorial slide there, Pine Valley Road culvert. It showed a picture of, if we go back one more, that one, bottom left-hand corner. The practice of covering all the culverts in huge amounts of Gabion rock, that doesn't stop nature coming back. I can take you around sites in West Auckland that have been like that for some time. Nature has come back, and we just reduced our maintenance ability to manual gloves and grubber, which increases our costs, etc. I'm just passing this on because I know in certain areas of the public out there, they are questioning acres of Gabion, how that's going to actually improve things for us in the long run.
Obviously, each site is different, has different characteristics. We'll take on board any feedback you have and local knowledge from your area on particular sites, so that's very welcome. The one in the picture, I'd have to ask the team for more detail around the exact design, but that looks to me like rip-rap scour protection around that culvert entrance.
Would you agree that any maintenance on there now has to be done manually? You can't put a digger in there unless you take it all away. All I'm looking at is the increased costs you can see in maintenance that we're building into our design. That's all I want to feedback.
Yeah, no, that's great. We're very much focused on minimising the ongoing maintenance cost, lowest whole of life cost. So yeah, any examples that you can give us to focus on that is welcome.
Thank you. Billy?
Kia ora everybody. Just picking up on the flood recovery numbers, 80% of 800 roading slips across the region repaired under budget. I had to look that one up on Google. How did you do this? I mean, what I'm trying to do is not put a yoke around your neck, but if you can do something and accomplish this like you have, are the last 20% the real doozers? Is there did you allow extra time for contingency? Because I'd like to copy and paste that onto a few other things.
Yeah, so after the 23 storm events, there was 2,000 sites impacted across the network, and they were prioritised to be addressed under two key areas. One was to first enable access to people's properties and houses and so on. And then the second was looking at how they impacted the flow across the network. So we've prioritised each of the sites and are basically working through the list. So the final ones that we're working on, some of them are more complex. So for instance, Millflat Road Bridge that got washed out, that had more complex design and consenting requirements, which meant it went slower. Similar, the Awhitu Peninsula Manukau south site was very complex. Others are of lower priority on the network, and so that's why they've been left to the end. And the length of time that it's taken is just a factor of the resource available to work through all of those.
I mean, it's great to see that. I'm putting a positive spin on it. And just two more, because the cones and stone chips are up for kōrero. We've got the conification of Ōrākei going on at the moment. Leslie will know all about it. And we've had quite a few put up around the Kupe Street and Kepa Road intersection. So I can see there's an issue with just cones being left everywhere. How do you evaluate when there's an over-conification of an area? Those are technical terms.
I'm going to adopt that and steal that and have an over-conification program. But essentially we look at the initial application to see whether there are too many devices that the contractor or the person undertaking the work is proposing, and we'll often push back on that. Now that we don't have that strict rules-based COPTIM approach, we're pushing back on people and asking them to justify why they need so many devices. What people are taking a long time to understand is actually having too many is worse than having not enough. You build in a level of complacency with the travelling public, if not rage and frustration. And so we're pushing back at the moment on an application by application basis. But the other part of it is that they may not have installed it to plan. So they may have an approved plan, and then when they get to site, they do something different. In order to find those, we either need someone to tell us, or we've got 6 mobile auditors that go around and check. So it's a balance really of getting it right at the time of application, but also checking that they're doing the right thing out there on the network.
Yeah, no, I get that. And one of the issues we had was one truck went through, knocked the whole lot over, and they weren't picked up for 2 days. So people are getting out of their cars to do it. It's really dangerous.
So those we can deploy someone to check sites like that and hold the contractor responsible as long as we know, and there's a mechanism to report that after hours as well. We can circulate that again for people just so that you can let your constituents know that they can call the call centre and report those sorts of incidents.
Okay, oh, that's awesome. And last one, stone chips. In Ōrākei again, I get the feeling the cars are left to sweep up the stone chips. We had a really nasty one on Coates Ave, and there was just chips everywhere. And there's this poor guy mowing his lawns, throwing chips onto the cars that are driving past, plus the cars throwing them onto him. Plus you're hitting people waiting to cross the road. What sort of time frame would you expect the stone chips, the loose ones, after a period to actually be swept up properly? Because they're just not.
I can't give you the exact number of days, but in terms of the process, exactly what you said, chips are laid. There's a bedding in period where vehicle traffic does push them down into the bitumen, and then there's a sweep. What I do know is if, similar to what Tracy said, if constituents have an issue, they can contact AT, and I've dealt with a few cases where an additional sweep can be done. So the contractor will normally do a sweep quite soon after the chip sealing. But if for some reason it's not bedding down properly, then we can do an additional sweep. So if there is a particular site, we can definitely look at that and address it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks, Murray.
So we're breaking at 1 o'clock for lunch. We've got 5 minutes. So the next question is to the Mayor.
Oh, thank you for that. First of all, good stuff. A pat on the back for the announcement over the TTM, even if it was ignored this morning, but that's a good move. And as far as the move from risk to the other system, it's going to be hard because they actually make a lot more money under the old one. And I thought perhaps you could consider what a lot of countries have as yellow and black cones, or have a post yesterday's announcement cone that has to have stripes on it or something or other to show that they've heard. Try some hard-nosed stuff. But my question really was actually a different thing. Are you being ambitious enough on dynamic lanes and optimisation? Because your presentation says you're only delivering 3 this year and 4 the next. And I'd like to see more of a rush at that if that's possible.
So yes, we are. There's a pipeline we need to plan. So next year we've got 10 in the making. We just need time to forward plan them. So this year we've implemented 3 from memory, as you've said, and then next year we've got 10 coming, and the program ramps up.
Good, ramping up's good. And the optimisation, I see you've made a fair bit of progress on that, but I really want to see some real movement of the digital age, hard-nosed, if you can do that. So I'm looking forward to hearing plenty of, I know you're thinking about it, but...
Again, same answer. There's lots in the pipeline. They just take time to plan and implement, and we're always seeking to improve the technology. So
okay, I know you understand the problem. Okay, thanks very much for that.
Okay, Sharon, can you squeeze your question in 2 minutes?
I'll try. Okay, I don't often ask questions, so just on the traffic management with the cones, not all streets are the same, and just for an example, my street, very small, short street, we had cones for Africa for this, just for a concrete truck, and so what I'm saying is we had these hundreds and hundreds of cones just for one little job in the quietest street you can ever imagine, and we had 5 people standing there all day, in fact for 2 or 3 days, in this very quiet street. So how do we manage that? Do we have somebody from Auckland Transport that actually talks with the traffic management people to really look at their plan and to say, well, yes, well that plan works for that street, but it's not quite Pakuranga Road. It's a very quiet street. And just one other thing, quite often I go over to Green Bay to pick up my grandchildren some mornings, 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And what I've found, I think it's on a Monday morning, I've found the waste management trucks are on Hillsborough Road, very busy road, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So what happens, we've got all this new development that's going in on the roads, and you've got all these rubbish trucks using the road at peak traffic time, stopping, and it can take nearly 30 to 40 minutes to just go about half a kilometre, because the trucks you can't move, you can't get past them because they're all picking up the rubbish. So can we get Auckland Transport, it's not your fault, but can we get Auckland Transport and Waste Management to have a discussion about very busy roads being, it's at peak traffic time, having rubbish picked up, because this is what's causing a lot of the problems in the mornings.
Okay, I'll look to answer those two very, very briefly. First of all, we do 30,000 approvals. Tracy might want to block her ears, but there might be as many again of small constructors doing a residential home that decide for the concrete truck they want to put out cones in their own right. And there won't be an application, and we won't see anything except if people like you tell us. So there is a lot of cones out there being used by people that are looking to keep things safe. They're doing it because they think they're doing the right thing, and they'll be blocking up a piece of road. So if you see that, send it to us. We will have a look, and we will look to address it. But there's thousands of these things every single day operating. That's the first point. The second point is, if Waste Management is collecting rubbish at peak traffic time, my encouragement would be for you to talk to the Solid Waste Department in Auckland Council and see if you can modify the contracts for the pickup time.
They do that.
Okay, so it's 1 o'clock, it's 1:01. So we are going to break for lunch. We still have at least 4 questions to go after lunch. So we will break for half an hour. Would have been longer, but we've rattled on, so you'll have to get your pie quickly. Because I'm picking there's going to be a little bit of debate and there's going to be potential amendments, and so we're not going to get that done in this time. There's potentially an amendment coming. So I think there is. So we are breaking for lunch. We'll be back here at 1:35. We will kick off on the dot.